So everyone, my name is Vivian, and welcome to the JET program CIR process application process video. And sorry, as the name indicates, it's gonna be talking about. I will be talking about how it feels like to go through the application process as a CIR. I applied in the year of 2012, last year, in November. But I started on the process actually much earlier. I got connected with someone in the summer who used to be a CIR 10 years ago, and I basically was collecting information regarding what it was like for her to be a CIR. And she told me one thing, that depends on your prefecture, you do different works, and depends on your actual occupations, you do really different works. But she showed me what she did and how her project was like and everything. So, and then I decided it's an experience and sorry, I just got to get somewhere. I decided that's something I wanted to do as well. So I started to do the application. The application officially ends about the end of November, so which means you have to submit. Sorry, you have to submit the online application and physically mail your documents to the embassies. And I think the embassies in Toronto if you're in Canada. So anyway, when you apply there, depends on country, they're gonna write down where you're gonna mail it to. So the application is a little bit not problematic, but it's really time consuming. You have to have 2 reference letters. So, like if you're a student, start it earlier, like in September. That's when the teachers have a little bit free time to write a letter for you. So you need 2 references. One preferably from your Japanese professors. If you're applying for CIR, well, for ALT, I think a Japanese professor will work too. And the other one would preferably, in my opinion, from your working supervisor. So if you have work experience, perfect. If you have like part-time, perfect. But if you don't, but you do a lot of volunteer work, or like you're a tutor or whatever, ask for whoever's in the organization, like the supervisor in that organizations, or you need to have people who can who can talk about how dedicated you are and how what kind of person you are when you work, and I don't know, about enthusiasm, like Genki, I think is the keywords in JET program. And as for the Japanese, since you are applying for CIR, be sure to tell that your professor what CIR is and which position you are applying for, because that makes huge difference. I think I actually never read my professor's recommendation letter, but so basically, when I asked her to write it for me, I told her that it's gonna be a government-based job, and I'll be speaking Japanese there. And I do organization and public speaking, that type of things. So that's what I told her, and she actually wrote a letter according to what I told her. So I think for CIR, the Japanese skills is quite essential. Trust me, it's quite essential. So appeal to them that you are pretty good, and ask your professor to say that. And for the reference letter, it's not just one letter. It's actually one original with 2 photocopies, sealed in one envelope, and have signature cross on the back. So tell that to your professor, and then the person who's writing the other letter for you, they have to write it and make a photocopy, 2 photocopies of them, and then put it in the same envelope, and then write their signature on the back, and then hand it to you. There are 3 things that really bothered me a lot when I was applying for the application. One was the reference, because I heard the reference style they change every year. or they kind of just changed recently, so it wasn't used to be like that. So the way I told you, like how you have to make a photocopy, is what they did in 2012. I'm not sure whether they're doing it this year or not, but check with your coordinator. By the way, your coordinator, JEPRO coordinator, they're awesome people. Don't be afraid to ask them any question. They're really help. They want to help, because most likely they were a jet themselves, 10 or 20 years ago, or only a few years ago, I don't know, right? My coordinator was a really, really, really nice person, and he was a jet himself. So, and he's really willing to help me, and whenever I wrote him a question, like I usually have a lot of questions, I don't know why, I asked him a question, and he'll be replying it to me within a day, like usually within 5 hours. And yeah, really, if you have any question, don't be afraid to ask. And yeah, that was one thing, reference letter. And the other one about the application was the personal statement. It's about 2 pages, double space. And for the personal statement, basically you have to appeal to them that your love about Japan is great, and what kind of volunteer work or job you did. That's really like I can help you with the CIR position, and what kind of contribution you can do for the government, the local government, the local people, and what you are dreaming of to do as a CIR. So they want to see that you wrote the description of CIR. So you have to know the CIR is not the teaching position, but well, maybe you'll be doing some teaching related thing, but mainly it's about making events, translating, and forging the relationship between your own country and then your local prefecture. So you have to like actually pick your volunteer work that has a resemblance to whatever the requirements is for CIR, and write that in. And basically the style I wrote it was like in a chronological order. So I was talking about how I fell in love with Japan when I was 13 years old, and I self-taught Japanese, and how I've been doing that for the past 10 years, and then my love expands to the volunteer works I do. I go to the festivals, I dance, solan, I do a whole bunch of other non-Japanese related work too, which helped me with the CIR thing. And I was a student coordinator at my school, so that, coordinator and a coordinator for international relations, that kind of work. Yeah. So basically, you have to find the connections between whatever you're doing or you have been doing to whatever you will be doing or you imagine that what you will be doing. And also you can tell them that what you are excited about CIR. Like for me, it's public speaking. I love speaking. And as a CIR, even though I didn't know which prefecture I'll be assigned to, and I didn't know like exactly what kind of CIR I will be, I kind of like just express interest that I want to do public speaking, and I love to do events for different ages. You can actually do events for kids and the older people, right? So like you have to appeal that you are very rounded, and then you are thirsty for knowledge. You are craving for the connection with the Japanese people, and basically a lot about that. And the third thing, after you wrote your original draft, be prepared that you rewrite it for like 10 or 12, not 12, 20 or 30 times. I don't know how many times I rewrote it, but I remember it took me about 2 months to actually get to my final draft. So ask people around to read your draft, especially people who have been on JET, and people who are really good at grammar. Yes, that's really important. And the third thing about the application is the digital form. Because it's computer, be really careful. They don't have enough space. Like, for example, my university is called British Columbia. My UBC, University for British Columbia, and it's a long name, but the space is like that short. So when you write it down, you can't write like UBC. Who knows what UBC like represent for, right? So you have to actually write University of British Columbia, but then the way you write it, be careful. You can use the abbreviation, not abbreviation, like the short forms of university, like UNIB dot and British Columbia, that type of thing. Um, you are free to use them, write them down. And yeah, basically like the space is not enough, and you have to do a lot of like detail oriented job. And I actually felt quite Japanese when I was doing the application. I'm not a naturally detail oriented person, but I learned to read my application 5 or 6 times and get really nervous that I would make a mistake. And yeah, have some friends who is or are really detail oriented are very, very handy, because they can see whatever you can't, especially if they have like an editing experience. Perfect. I didn't have that type of friends, but I showed it to the lady I got connected to in summer, and she is a very detail oriented person, so she pointed out a lot of things I couldn't see. And I think that helped me a lot by going through the process, because what I heard from them is that even if you are brilliant, like you are the perfect person, but if you like make a lot of mistakes, they kind of like, they will see that you are not fit to work in Japan, because people in Japan are really detail oriented, and they really like, they pay a lot of attention on like the dress, like the formality, whatever, I know North Americans or the people from like the West are usually more relaxed, laid back. Like I'm kind of in the between, but still, yeah. And you have to be careful. But you know what? You get to experience how it feels like as a Japanese person going through all the process, perhaps. And so that's about the application. And after application, you will send it by the end of November. Sometimes depends on your region, you have different dates. For me, it was November. So you will be waiting till February. Mine was February, the middle of February. So, to hear back from them whether you are able to, whether you can go to the interview process or not. So as for CIR, I don't know whether you have taken a look at the statistic. There aren't that many CIRs. What it means, it's not that it's that competitive. It's more like, first of all, there aren't that many people, but there still are some people apply for CIR, but they aren't that many. They're not like like AOT. They're not like hundreds and hundreds applying for CIR. No, I think it's about, I don't know, like 40 or 50s, countries. Depends on where you're from. Like Canada, like we have like 7 or 8 people going to Japan as a CIR. So like 30 and 40 are pretty significant numbers. But if you are coming from like the States, probably more than that, because they usually have like 10 or 20-ish people going to Japan as a CR. So like, depends on your region, but don't freak out. It's not like 100 people are applying and you are competing against them. Like you're like one of 100. No, no, it's the chance to be selected are pretty small, but they're not like 1 out of 100. Don't worry. Well, maybe that is the situation in some countries, but from North America, just don't worry too much. And once you get through the interview process, be thankful, because there aren't that many people get through it. And so you will have this chance, the awesome chance to meet probably 3. I think it's 3, because mine was 3 interviewers. One from the university, one from the embassy, the other one from like the association, jet association, who was a CIR, was herself a few years ago, or a few years ago. So basically, my interview was like 95% English and 5% Japanese. They will be asking you about like a regular job interview question, like what are your weaknesses, what are your strengths, and some of them will be asking you about like, can you introduce a food that people eat in your region, like. Well, I feel like if you're coming from other country like Korea, China, or like like that type of country, like Europe, it's gonna be easier for you because like you don't have that many immigrants, and like you have your own identity, like so clear that you can articulate. But whereas North America, it's probably gonna be more vague. North America, New Zealand, Australia, because especially for like Canada, we're really young as a country, and like there aren't that much you can talk about food, like poutine, maple syrup. But if you wanted to really like stand out in the interview, try to talk to something that's like you actually eat, even though it's not like so Canadian, but really justify them as a Canadian food. Like also the way you look like your ethnicity, like you may not be what other people would think Canadian look like. You may not look like that, but you justify it. Literally justify it. It's not like you're 嘘をついてるわけじゃないんですよ. It's just, like you're telling them that you have so much confidence. You love this country you're representing. Like it's your country, and I know what people eat, and I know what I eat, and as a Canadian, that's what I'm eating, and this is a Canadian food because other people are eating it too. For example, California roll, or BC roll, BC roll, British Columbia roll. No, you just justify them as the food of your region. So they may ask you about food, clothes, or holiday, anything. They may ask you about anything. I was preparing for holidays actually. I was thinking about like, I thought I would be making a small speech about like a holiday in Japanese. So I wrote a speech draft and I memorized it. It was about like beaver and the holiday of Easter. I know they don't really have any link, but I went from like a little bit introduction of Canada, beaver, the animal, and then later on I kind of talk about the holidays, and I focused on Easter. Yes. I don't know what kind of question they will ask you about, but really just I think it'll be just what you encounter every day, probably most likely. Yeah. So about the Japanese part, don't freak out. Really don't freak out. If you already have Nikyu and Ikkyu, no worries. You are qualified. And if you're like an awesome kanji reader, you are more than qualified. I actually do have EQ, but the article I read was about Nikyu level, and it was like I had 1 minute anmoku, so like I read it with my heart without reading out aloud, and then I read it out aloud. So for you do have to know a certain amount of kanji. For me it was like about calories, like a health kind of issue, like how it's talking about like Japanese people. Is it Japanese people? I don't know, but it was in Japanese, so like it's talking about like, I think it's Japanese people, like they actually buy food according to how much calorie they have, and they're not really like looking to the nutrition. And yeah, so basically you'll be reading articles like that, and you answer a few questions, which you can find answers from the article, and the last question will usually about your own opinion. When you get that question, show them who you are. my answer was really short, but then afterwards, I was like recalling how it was like going through interview process. I thought about 5 different answers to that. So if you're smart enough and you're quick enough, give them as much as possible because they want to see how much you can articulate in Japanese. Well, the more you say, obviously you're really good. And they want to see how probably critical. I don't know. Critical thinking is encouraged in North America, so it's a good thing to show them, but not over-critical. Just be reasonably critical. Reasonable, yes. Yeah. So that's about the interview process. Oh yeah, really have fun. It's an honor that you get through the interview process, and it's an honor to be known by your interviewer. So show them your appreciation by asking them about some questions. In the end, you will have like a Q&A section. Ask them questions. It can be personal, literally, it can be personal. And better it be personal because they're gonna remember you. So, but it's like a normal job interview. You don't ask about salary, benefits, like it's actually, if you get through the process, they will have a huge document about the benefits. I'm like, I actually didn't read it. Yeah, it's everything. It's like too many. So what you want to know is about your interviewer. It's about appreciation. If you are curious about CIR, ask about CIR. If you're curious about JET program, ask about JET program. If you're curious about any of your interviewer, because most of them are they're either Japanese, or they do have they work in the government, or they kind of do have the JET experience, so you can tailor towards them. Make it personal. You can ask as many questions as possible, I guess. I only asked one question. So I asked my the JET person in Japanese. He went to Kyoto, and I actually like Kyoto a lot. So I asked him what it was like being a CR and what kind of 一番楽しい思い出は何でしたかCIR として京都で働いた時の So that was my question. Well, of course, it was better Japanese, but not like that, So he was really funny. He's like, ちょっと緊張させましたね、日本語で喋るのは。So that's really cute and yeah. So I think I made pretty good impression. And he was talking about how pure people were in Kyoto, how they don't have any how in the reality a lot of people just talk about money. But he was talking about how people really care about other people in Kyoto. So that was really impressive for me. And I was like, wow, that is the type of Japan I want to see. Yeah. So basically that's about the process. Oh yes, after the interview, you will wait for another 2 months. Probably by the end of April, you will hear back from them whether you're shortlisted or alternative or whatever. Once you are shortlisted, that means you are in the program. As long as you don't have any major problem, you commit crimes or you got injured or blah blah blah, a serious injured or whatever, you are in the program. They will send you to Japan. But if you are alternative, don't worry. For CIR, you never know. Sometimes the shortlisted are the excellent one they really wanted, so they put them as top. But the alternative doesn't mean you are worse than them. No, it's just they only have that many places available at that time. So you may be upgraded later on. Depends on whether they are more opening up or the people in the shortlisted something happened to them or they decline or whatever, that type of thing. So basically, as an AOT, you have way more chance. So don't worry. Yeah. Oh yeah, my interview was done about 20 minutes. So if your own interview is short, don't worry. Because 20 minutes was the least amount of time they can actually give to an interview. I thought I failed it. Yeah. Basically that's what about it. And enjoy the process. because in May you'll hear back from them where you'll be placed at. So usually they will give you like the prefecture. They probably won't tell you about city, because once they tell you about prefecture, it depends on that prefecture to contact you later on. So I will not go through the JEP coordinator. However, if you don't hear back from them like 3 weeks before departure in August, email the coordinator to ask. But everything will be fine. So that's kind of like my compressed orientation about the interview process. If you have any questions, you can just comment below and I'll answer them. Just remember, enjoy your interview process. People are really nice, and you'll meet a lot of people there. AOT, CIR, all sorts of people. People who went to Japan, who during the pre-orientation, pre-departure orientation, you meet a lot of people and have fun. Oh yes, sorry. The other thing about the interview process, it's a job interview, but remember it's for Japanese government. So wear something that you think the Japanese people will wear. Not like the Japanese teenagers. I mean, like, actually, like Japanese government people will wear. So conservative color. If you are a guy, wear a suit. It's like a really properly tailored suit. If you're a woman, well, you can wear like the pencil skirts, like a suit, or you can have pants. I wore a pencil skirt. So, but the color was like gray, darkish. But just I don't recommend you to put on like really dazzling color suit, because some people may prefer it and you may stand out, but you never know. Just for the safe side, anything that the Japanese people will not frown upon, like not like the popular North American style, but something that like Asian people, some conservative, not Asian, Japanese conservative people would feel fine with, wear that. Yeah, I actually went for shopping for the suits before my interview. Yeah. What else? Oh yeah. I will be doing more of those type of video talking about my experience at CIR in Fukushima. Yeah, I'm going to Fukushima City. Yes. Yeah, I'll be doing a lot more video like that, like this too, after I go to Japan. I'm really excited, actually. I'll be having a blog and a YouTube channel, yeah, like the one I already have. I'll be talking about the CIR experience and just as a foreigner, how it feels like living in Japan in general, And I heard Japan is really hot in summer. Be prepared. I'm telling myself about that. Yes, just enjoy it. And I hope to see you if you go to Japan. Yeah, and I hope that the video actually help you figure something out and give you some motivations, and just really don't worry. Yes, I think that's it, and I'll see you guys soon later on. Bye.